Hi guys, and welcome to the very first episode of the Bizzness of Streaming empowered by Bumble, where we feature people in the industry that are going to tell us how to do different things to hopefully be able to express ourselves, grow our brand, build communities, and create connection. Today, we're going to be talking all about podcasts, how to start a podcast, what to consider before starting a podcast, and it will be joined by Jess Brohard. She is an incredible, beautiful, amazing woman in the industry. Jess, how are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm good. That was so many, so nice adjectives to describe me. So thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I love, just helping people out and kind of transferring any sort of knowledge that I've gleaned onto them. So thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Yes, I love it. So Jess, I picked, when I was going through the different creators that I wanted to feature and talk to for these different segments, I thought of you because you have recently started your own podcast. And I thought, why not have someone who's the most freshest memories in your mind right now is building this? Yep. You are the best possible teacher for me right now to be able to do this myself. Yes. And I'm so excited to learn how to be part of this because I know there's a ton of different platforms we can be choosing from, a ton of different software we can use. I'm going to kind of lean on you a little bit more with this because I'm the noob. I'm the live streamer, but when it comes to podcasts, that's still just a whole nother world. But
and like we were talking about just a little bit ago, like just because it is so fresh in my mind, I will hopefully have a little bit more of an intermediate knowledge to give people as far as like it won't be too over anyone's head, and a lot of people who are wanting to get into this I'll be able to tell them kind of the exact process that I took, which literally began with how to make a podcast. You think I Googled, so
yes, at least you're honest about that. That's the first step. So you were obviously excited and inspired to start a podcast, and I always talk to people about this when it comes to streaming. Like, one of the first steps and the most important things is kind of to define your unique angle, and look at other people, or I guess in this case, listen to other podcasts and see what they're doing, but then decide, okay, how do I stand out from that? Like, in what ways am I different? How am I unique? How did you go about that?
Well, I've been listening to Ashley Christ's podcast and really all of her content. She has really, really great content. And I, of course, never wanted to like copy her style or anything, but I did draw a lot of inspiration from her.
I love that you were able to find your unique angle. And I think that's really speaking to people so well right now. So people listening right now, what do you think is a great kind of question for them to ask themselves, or are there any things that they can try and focus on in their own life to find their own unique angle?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I think for a while, I think everyone's kind of looking for their own unique angles in a lot of ways, and especially when it comes to content creation, because how do you stand out among the crowd? It is kind of hard to like find your identity. One thing you can do is really ask yourself and really dig down and find like what you're passionate about. Like, imagine that you win the lottery or you somehow come into a great sum of money and you never have to work again. Like, how would you spend your days? What would you do? Would you learn a bunch of instruments? Are you particularly musically talented? Would you just spend your days like playing the saxophone or whatever, Okay, well, then create music content. Great. Would you just read absolutely everything? Like, okay, a lot of other people like reading too. Maybe create some content around books. Like, just really kind of ask yourself what you're passionate about outside of what you think can make yourself money.
I want to meet the person that would play saxophone all of their days. They won the lottery. Why isn't that person my friend right now? That's amazing. All right, we've developed our uniqueness now, Jess. There are so many platforms to put podcasts out now, and I believe it almost feels like there's a new one coming out every single day. And also people are starting to say, hey, podcasts don't just have to live on the podcast app. We can also record in video. We can record in 360 degree VR, which I really want to do at one point, and allow the viewer to kind of be there in the living room or wherever you are recording. What are the right questions to be asking yourself when you're going through the decision of where to start posting this? Or is there a way to post to all of them?
Yeah, well, there's so much you can do these days. And then the beauty of it is that you really get to kind of pick and choose what's going to work best for you and your audience and your purpose. And so what a lot of people are doing these days, especially because like, a lot of the people I interact with are other Twitch streamers. So a lot of people are they're calling it a podcast, but then realistically it's live and it has video. So it's more of like, oh, it's a live stream, It's just more content, which is always going to be a good thing because you have that content. It can live on the VOD on Twitch. You can put it on YouTube, and then you can break it down and extract just the audio, and then you can use that to distribute to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, etc. Or you can have it just like you can put it where you want it.
So I want to transition now into some hardware and software questions, because I think a lot of people who have been watching podcasts for a long time, their favorite people have, the multiple thousands of dollars setups. What kind of technology in the hardware and software space do you think is necessary? And how do you suppose that people kind of like graduate from that or like build up from that?
Yeah, this is another I love talking about because I'm a nerd and I love talking about like technology and hardware and everything like that. And there's so many, it's the other beautiful thing is that there's just, if you really do have kind of a budget in mind, you can do something like just a microphone. You don't have to do the camera setup as well. You can do just a microphone, do audio only, and you can get like a perfectly decent microphone for what I would imagine would fit in someone's budget. Like I still use the Blue Snowball, which has been well suited to my needs. I haven't felt the need to upgrade, but there are like much higher end options. Then Blue, of course, has the Yeti, which is like a step up. I think that's, I don't know, probably 80 or 90. And then if you want to go like super high end, there's those like ASMR mics. They're like binaural or whatever they're called. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Yeah, those things are like $400 at like the very minimum. Like their low end models, like $400 or $500, and then it goes all the way up to like $1,500, and like things are way out of my price range. So it just kind of depends on like what you need, how big your budget is as well. And then like same thing with cameras. You can get something that's really nice. You can have a nice like HD setup, or you don't necessarily have to. Because there's a lot you can do with like lighting to make your camera look a lot better than it really is.
So one of the coolest parts about a podcast is that you're talking to other people, and a lot of people really focus on having guests on their show. So what's your best advice on how to reach out to those first guests?
So when I was looking for guests for my podcast, I began kind of reaching out to the first initial ones. I pretty much started with people whose work I admired, and I thought, who has a story that I would really want to hear? Because at the end of the day, like the audience that my podcast is targeting is like people just like me, realistically. So think of who you really honestly want as a guest on your podcast. If it's someone who you think is going to say no, like Ninja. If you decide that you want to have Ninja as a guest on your podcast, you might as well try reaching out to him, because sure, maybe he doesn't answer, but like at least you tried. You haven't lost anything by trying. So you might as well like shoot your shot, invite on whoever you think you would want to hear from.
All right, so a lot of the podcasts that I personally listen to have like a pretty steady run of show or a flow that they've obviously perfected over the years of them having that podcast. So what type of opener and topics and things do you use, and how did you come to those conclusions?
Yeah, so I do things probably a little bit differently than maybe many other podcasts, just because the nature, like the subject matter is more kind of interview style. It's more of a conversation than like a kind of presentation of facts and stuff like that. So it's just a little different than like many podcasts that I currently listen to. So instead of having like the opener and presenting the topic and everything, I mean, of course I have an opener, but then I let the guest introduce themselves. And then from there, it's just kind of like straight up conversation. But it doesn't hurt to structure it a little bit more, I think. That, again, I think goes back to your content kind of evolving. You see what works, you see what doesn't work. I tried stuff on the first episode that I'm never going to do again, and then I'm picking up new things that I wish I had had way back then. So I always think less structure is better, but again, that might not work for every podcast.
Yeah, but that's what works for you. And that's what's important, is to make it unique, like we talked about earlier. I think that's great. All right, so now that I understand the importance of brand and format, and I'm starting to get my podcast together, like what's the final kind of like bits of advice or words that you'd like to share with someone who's about to start their podcast?
Make sure to have fun with it, because even if you're talking about like a really deep subject matter, it is pretty lighthearted, or it should be lighthearted, I think, because after all, it's entertainment is what we're doing. It is information, but it's also entertainment at the end of the day. And like, if you're not having fun, if you're too focused on like putting on a show, or you're too stiff or anything like that, then that's going to come across. And I think to really connect with your viewers in a genuine way, just make sure it's fun for you, make sure it's fun for your guests. Because of that, I've had people reaching out and saying like, oh, I've loved the podcast I've listened to. If you need a guest for a future episode, I would love to do that because it sounds like so much fun. And that's like the best feeling in the world.
That's the ultimate, isn't it?
That's
so
of
cool.
knowing like they're doing my work for me, you know, I didn't even have to reach out to them. And in a few cases, it was people that I was going to ask to be a guest on the podcast anyway. And then they contacted me and that was just like, so much joy.
Win-win-win in those situations.
Exactly.
That's so great. All right, Jess, I feel like I learned so much from this time with you, and I'm more inspired than ever to create a podcast of my own. And I really see how much time and thinking goes into it. And, you know, taking skills from live streaming and being able to kind of couple that into podcasts, I think it's a really nice blend. So thank you for showing me and hopefully inspiring some people that are watching this right now to do the same in their life. So Jess, if people want to follow your podcast or come check you out online, where can we find you?
Great question. So my name is Jess Brohard. That's my real legal last name. So that's what I go by on all my social media. It's just at Jess Brohard, which is a really funny last name. And then my side business that my podcast is part of is called Happy Gems, spelled HAPPI Gems. So we're just happygems.com, or you can search for the name Happy Gems on your favorite podcasting platform. We are distributed to, I believe, all of the major ones. So we're on Spotify for sure. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on Google Play. And then I think there are a handful of others as well where you can find us.
All right. So I'm dying to hear more about it too. I know we talked a little bit on your podcast, but what is Happy Gems? Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, thanks. So it's primarily a jewelry store, but it has a major focus on mental health. So some of our pieces are kind of, you know, inspired by motivational kind of feelings and sayings and stuff like that. And then our other thing that we do is we do give back to mental health services with every piece of jewelry purchased from us. We donate a bracelet to someone struggling with their mental health. And then we also do a couple of other little initiatives. Like right now we have a bracelet that just says stay safe on it. And it's kind of our way of thanking essential workers during this time of COVID-19. And for every one of those sold, we do donate $10 to COVID-19 relief funds. So we're just primarily, you know, we're trying to make the world a happier, prettier place through our jewelry and our mission statement.
Amazing. That's like the ultimate win-win-win-win-win situation that you've created, Jess. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being such a huge, incredible part of Team Kitty. Thank you for joining me on this content series, Jess. You're an absolute star in this community, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being here with you.
All right. That concludes an episode of The Bizzness of Streaming empowered by Bumble, where we talked all about podcasts, how to make one, how to make all the important decisions before you launch it with Jess Brohard. Thank you so much, Jess, for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.